In the vast and unforgiving universe of Warhammer 40K, where colossal armies clash and gods of chaos scheme, the horrors of battle are not always waged with bolters and blades. Beneath the surface of galactic conquest, hidden in the dark recesses of void ships, hive cities, and forgotten worlds, lurks a menace far more insidious. Parasitic entities, living shadows of death, represent a silent and unrelenting threat to the Imperium of man. These parasites are not the stuff of mere myths or Xenos folklore. They are a stark reminder that death can strike without warning, wearing no armor and bearing no weapon. The Imperium, with its vast bureaucratic machinery and ironclad armies, has often found itself powerless against such microscopic foes. For a galaxy rife with war, it is ironic how a single unseen invader can lay low the mighty. Every facet of life within the Imperium, from the crowded hive spires of Necromunda to the towering cathedrals of shrine worlds, exists under a constant, silent threat. Yet, most citizens, loyal to the God Emperor, are blissfully ignorant of the horrors that infest the shadows. Only those burdened with the knowledge of history, the grim chroniclers of the Inquisition and the Adeptus Mechanicus, understand the scale of devastation that a parasite can unleash. For every tale of heroism sung by the ecclesiarchy, there exists a shadowed truth of entire planets consumed not by war or rebellion, but by the creeping death of an unseen invader. These parasites do not discriminate. Their victims are rich and poor, powerful and weak, human and Xenos alike. They are not confined by borders, treaties, or alliances. The horrors they bring transcend the grand strategies of the galaxy's most powerful players. It is here, in the heart of such a grim setting, that our story begins. A story of a parasite so deadly, so fearsome, that it stands as a testament to nature's cruel design. This is not merely a tale of infection or death. It is a story of survival, adaptation, and the desperate measures taken to combat an enemy that cannot be reasoned with, bribed, or slain by conventional means. The deadliest parasite in the history of the Imperium is more than a biological anomaly. It is a symbol of the fragility of mankind's dominion over the galaxy. It forces even the most pious servants of the Emperor to question their place in an uncaring cosmos. Who were the victims? What were the consequences? And perhaps most chillingly, could such a threat rise again? As we delve deeper into this dark chapter of the 40K universe, prepare to uncover a truth that is both fascinating and horrifying. A truth that lies hidden in the pages of history, whispered in forbidden texts, and etched into the shattered remains of worlds lost to time. This is the tale of a predator unseen, the silent killer that has haunted humanity's dominion across the stars. And so, the stage is set. Let us journey into the shadows to uncover the legacy of the Imperium's deadliest parasite, a legacy soaked in blood, terror, and the unyielding fight for survival. The events surrounding the deadliest parasite in the history of the Imperium brought together an array of players from vastly different corners of the galaxy. These participants ranged from those seeking to understand the parasite's nature to those striving to contain its spread, and even those who unwittingly became its carriers. Each played a role, either by design or by unfortunate circumstance, in the tale of this unparalleled biological horror. First and foremost were the agents of the Inquisition, whose responsibility for safeguarding humanity against existential threats brought them face to face with the parasite. They were the first to uncover its devastating effects and to connect its outbreaks to wider galactic consequences. The Ordo Xenos, in particular, played a critical role as their expertise in alien biology and their vigilance against Xenos influences made them uniquely suited to investigating the origins and behavior of this deadly organism. Their efforts often collided with bureaucratic resistance and operational secrecy, yet they pressed on, knowing the cost of inaction. Working alongside the Inquisition, or sometimes at odds with them, were elements of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The priesthood of Mars approached the parasite from a purely scientific perspective, driven by their insatiable thirst for knowledge. For them, the organism was not merely a threat, but also an opportunity, a source of forbidden data that could advance their understanding of biological and technological integration. Tech priests and their subordinates took great risks in their quest to study and even contain samples of the parasite, often operating under conditions that tested their faith in their own methodologies. Among the military forces of the Imperium, the Astra Militarum played a significant, albeit tragic, role. The parasite often took root within dense populations of human soldiers, spreading rapidly through cramped barracks, trenches, and transport ships. Commanders found themselves torn between their duty to preserve their forces and the grim necessity of culling infected units to prevent further outbreaks. Many guardsmen, knowing little of the true nature of the threat, faced unimaginable horrors as they witnessed their comrades succumbing to the parasite's effects. Entire regiments were lost, their sacrifice forming a grim reminder of the cost of survival in such dire circumstances. Meanwhile, the Imperial Navy found itself thrust into a dual role of containment and eradication. Void ships, with their sprawling labyrinths of corridors and crowded decks, proved fertile grounds for the parasite's spread. The captains and crews of these ships were forced to implement extreme measures, including blockades and self-imposed quarantines, to prevent the parasite from escaping into the wider galaxy. For many, the weight of such decisions tested their resolve, as the line between survival and annihilation became increasingly blurred. At the heart of these efforts were the civilian populations of the Imperium. Hive cities, agri-worlds, and even isolated outposts were all affected by the parasite's relentless advance. The lives of billions were disrupted as entire worlds were plunged into chaos. For the average citizen, the parasite was an unseen terror, an affliction that struck without warning and left devastation in its wake. Their suffering served as a grim testament to the vulnerability of humanity, even within the perceived safety of the Emperor's light. Despite their fractured nature, certain Xenos factions were also caught up in the parasite's web. Some were inadvertently responsible for its spread, while others became its victims, succumbing to the same horrors faced by humanity. In rare instances, Xenos forces acted in ways that hinted at an understanding, or even manipulation, of the parasite, suggesting a deeper connection that remains shrouded in mystery. Their involvement, whether deliberate or incidental, added another layer of complexity to an already convoluted and deadly situation. Finally, there were the rogue elements within the Imperium itself. Smugglers, outlaws, and other independent operators who unwittingly carried the parasite across star systems. Driven by greed or desperation, they trafficked in contaminated goods and materials, often unaware of the danger they were spreading. Their actions, though largely accidental, had catastrophic consequences, making them unwitting accomplices in the parasite's rampage. Each of these players, whether acting out of duty, curiosity, fear, or ignorance, contributed to the unfolding events surrounding the parasite's reign of terror. Their roles were varied, yet all were intertwined in the grim tapestry of this chapter in Imperial history. The parasite was not merely an enemy to be fought, but a force that exposed the fragility and interconnectedness of life across the galaxy. In their efforts to confront it, these individuals and factions would reveal the limits of their own strength and the enduring cost of survival in the 41st millennium. The emergence of the deadliest parasite in the history of the Imperium was not a singular event, but the culmination of numerous interconnected factors that unfolded over centuries. The galaxy's vastness, its countless ecosystems, and the inherent vulnerabilities of human and Xenos civilizations created a perfect storm for such a threat to arise. This was not a phenomenon birthed overnight, but rather the result of negligence, ignorance, and the relentless march of events that led to its eventual prominence. The Imperium's sheer scale played a significant role in creating the conditions for the parasite's rise. The interconnected nature of its many worlds, spanning hive cities, agri-worlds, forge planets, and trade hubs, meant that diseases, pests, and biological anomalies often traveled unnoticed across great distances. Merchant fleets, pilgrim ships, and supply convoys frequently acted as unknowing carriers for invasive organisms, spreading potential threats from one sector to another before containment efforts could even begin. This intricate web of interstellar travel ensured that any small biological danger, once introduced, could quickly become a galactic issue. Centuries of human expansion into the unknown also contributed to the unfolding disaster. As the Imperium's explorers ventured into uncharted territories, they encountered ecosystems teeming with alien flora and fauna. These environments, untouched by humanity, harbored countless pathogens, parasites, and organisms beyond human comprehension. The reckless exploitation of these ecosystems, whether through mining, colonization, or resource harvesting, disrupted the delicate balance of local biology. In many cases, such disruptions awakened ancient organisms that had remained dormant for millennia, hidden away in the soil of forgotten worlds or the ice of distant moons. The exploitation of Xenos artifacts and technology was another significant precursor to the spread of such dangers. The Adeptus Mechanicus, rogue traders, and other factions often sought out relics from alien civilizations, disregarding the potential risks these items posed. Ancient bioweapons, experimental organisms, or even long-extinct species trapped within stasis fields were inadvertently reintroduced into the galaxy. These artifacts, though seemingly inert, often carried remnants of biological threats that adapted rapidly when exposed to new hosts. The desire for power and technological advancement often blinded those involved to the potential consequences of their actions. Another factor that cannot be ignored is humanity's reliance on densely populated urban centers. Hive cities, with their billions of inhabitants, provided the ideal breeding ground for parasites. Cramped living conditions, poor sanitation, and the constant movement of people created an environment where even the smallest biological threat could escalate into a full-blown catastrophe. The parasite in question thrived in such conditions, exploiting the vulnerabilities of these sprawling megastructures to spread rapidly and efficiently. Efforts to monitor and control outbreaks were often overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the populations involved, allowing the parasite to flourish unchecked. The Imperium's disregard for the natural world also played a role in the events leading to the parasite's rise. Agri-worlds, stripped of their natural biodiversity to maximize crop production, became monocultures that lacked the ecological defenses needed to repel invasive species. Similarly, the Mechanicus's terraforming efforts, designed to reshape hostile worlds into habitable environments, often disrupted existing ecosystems in ways that were poorly understood. These practices not only weakened planetary defenses against alien pathogens, but also created opportunities for organisms to adapt and evolve in unforeseen ways. Beyond ecological and logistical factors, the political and bureaucratic structure of the Imperium exacerbated the situation. The sheer inefficiency of its administrative apparatus meant that warnings often went unheeded, and critical information was lost in endless chains of communication. Local outbreaks, which might have been contained with swift action, were allowed to escalate due to delays in decision-making and a lack of coordination between imperial authorities. Fear of reprisal from higher-ranking officials often led planetary governors and administrators to conceal the severity of outbreaks, further complicating efforts to address the problem. Moreover, the widespread use of servitors, cybernetic constructs, and automated systems introduced unique vulnerabilities. Many of these technologies were not equipped to detect or counteract biological threats, allowing parasites to infiltrate and exploit even the most secure facilities. The parasite in question demonstrated an uncanny ability to bypass traditional defense mechanisms, embedding itself in machinery and organic systems alike. This adaptability made containment efforts all the more challenging, as traditional protocols proved insufficient against such a versatile foe. Finally, the cultural and religious attitudes of the Imperium also played a role. The ecclesiarchy's emphasis on faith over science often led to dismissals of warnings from biologically inclined scholars or tech priests. Superstitions about Xenos plagues and divine punishment created an environment where rational investigation was frequently overshadowed by fear and dogma. This hindered early attempts to study and understand the parasite, delaying critical countermeasures that could have mitigated its spread. In the end, the stage was set for a biological catastrophe of unprecedented scale. The interplay of ecological disruption, human negligence, and the inherent weaknesses of the Imperium created the perfect environment for the deadliest parasite in its history to emerge. By the time its presence was recognized, the galaxy had already become its feeding ground, and the battle for survival had begun. The outbreak of the deadliest parasite in the history of the Imperium unfolded as a series of escalating events that began as small, isolated incidents and rapidly spiraled into a galaxy-spanning crisis. Each stage of its development demonstrated not only the adaptability of the parasite, but also the vulnerabilities of humanity's vast and interconnected empire. The first signs of the parasite's presence were subtle and easily dismissed. Initial reports from remote agri-worlds and frontier settlements described unexplained illnesses among livestock and workers. These outbreaks were often attributed to local conditions, contaminated water supplies, poor hygiene, or exposure to unknown native fauna. Inhabitants, largely uneducated about biological threats, rarely considered the possibility of something more sinister. These minor incidents were overlooked by local authorities, who either lacked the resources to investigate or feared drawing attention to their world's inefficiencies. The next stage began when the parasite started appearing in larger, more densely populated areas. Merchants and workers who had unknowingly been exposed to infected goods or organisms carried the parasite to hive cities and trade hubs. The close quarters and unsanitary conditions of these urban centers provided an ideal environment for the parasite to flourish. Cases of strange illnesses began to rise exponentially, but the symptoms varied widely, making it difficult for Medicaid teams to recognize a single cause. Initial responses focused on treating the sick rather than identifying the source, allowing the parasite to spread further. As outbreaks intensified, the Imperium's response escalated. Local governors imposed quarantines, often too late to be effective. Entire districts within hive cities were sealed off, with millions of residents left to fend for themselves. These measures, while intended to contain the parasite, often created new problems. Panicked populations attempted to flee quarantine zones, spreading the infection even further. The situation worsened as fear and misinformation took hold, leading to riots and the breakdown of order in many affected areas. The parasite's presence was eventually brought to the attention of higher imperial authorities when it reached critical trade routes and void ships. These vessels, vital to the Imperium's logistics, became breeding grounds for the organism. Crews and passengers fell ill en masse, with some ships becoming adrift as their personnel succumbed. The loss of these vessels had a ripple effect, disrupting supply lines and communication networks. The scale of the issue finally drew the attention of the Inquisition and the Adeptus Mechanicus, who began investigating the outbreaks with greater urgency. Efforts to identify the parasite and its origins revealed horrifying truths. Its ability to adapt to different hosts and environments rendered standard containment protocols ineffective. The parasite did not simply kill its hosts, it used them as vectors to ensure its survival and propagation. As these discoveries came to light, the Inquisition authorized more drastic measures, including extermination campaigns on infected worlds. Entire planetary populations were purged to prevent further spread, but the parasite had already gained a foothold in multiple sectors. The crisis reached a turning point when it became clear that the parasite was not a natural organism, but one potentially linked to ancient Xenos experimentation. This revelation added a layer of complexity to the situation, as some factions within the Imperium sought to weaponize the parasite rather than eradicate it. These factions operated in secret, driven by the belief that controlling such a potent biological threat could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. Their actions further complicated containment efforts and deepened the mistrust among Imperial forces. Throughout the crisis, the parasite demonstrated an alarming resilience. Attempts to sterilize infected areas often fail due to its ability to survive in dormant states or adapt to harsh environments. Efforts to develop targeted countermeasures were hampered by the parasite's rapid mutation, which rendered most treatments obsolete within weeks. The sheer scale of the outbreaks overwhelmed the Imperium's resources, forcing it to make impossible choices about which worlds to save and which to sacrifice. The final stage of the parasite's rise involved its infiltration into previously thought-secure locations, including forge worlds and even isolated research facilities. Its ability to bypass quarantine measures and spread through unanticipated vectors, such as food supplies and mechanical systems, highlighted the inadequacy of existing defenses. In some cases, infected individuals displayed erratic behavior, leading to speculation that the parasite might have an influence beyond physical affliction. These incidents added an aura of dread to an already dire situation, as the parasite's true capabilities remained largely unknown. Despite the extensive damage it caused, the parasite was eventually brought under control, though not eliminated. This required unprecedented coordination between the Inquisition, the Astra Militarum, and the Adeptus Mechanicus. Entire sectors were subjected to extreme measures, including planetary bombardments, in an effort to eradicate every trace of the organism. While these actions succeeded in halting its immediate spread, they left a legacy of destruction and uncertainty. The parasite's adaptability and resilience meant that even the most thorough efforts could not guarantee its total extinction. The events surrounding the rise and spread of this parasite serve as a grim reminder of the Imperium's fragility. Each stage of the crisis exposed vulnerabilities in its systems and revealed the devastating consequences of complacency and overreach. The galaxy has since remained on edge, knowing that even the most thorough containment efforts may not be enough to prevent the parasite from returning. The lessons learned from this dark chapter of Imperial history continue to influence its policies, though the scars it left behind will never fully heal. The turning point in the crisis caused by the deadliest parasite in the history of the Imperium came when a critical decision was made by the Ordo Xenos. Faced with the relentless spread of the parasite and its devastating effects on both human populations and critical Imperial infrastructure, a conclave of senior inquisitors convened to determine the course of action. The decision they reached would mark a fundamental shift in the Imperium's response, prioritizing total eradication over containment, a gamble that would come at an unthinkable cost. The key moment occurred when reports emerged of the parasite's ability to evade even the most advanced detection methods. This discovery, combined with evidence that traditional quarantine protocols had failed repeatedly, forced the Inquisition to confront a chilling reality. Existing methods of control were not sufficient to halt the organism's advance. The parasite had proven itself not only a threat to planetary populations, but also to the cohesion of the Imperium itself. The fear was no longer about localized outbreaks, but about the potential collapse of entire sectors if left unchecked. The critical event was triggered by the fall of a strategically vital hive world, known for its role as a manufacturing and logistics hub for nearby warfronts. Despite rigorous quarantine efforts and the deployment of elite forces to contain the outbreak, the parasite overwhelmed the population within weeks. The loss of this world was not just a logistical blow, it was a psychological one. The Imperium's faith in its ability to manage the crisis was shaken to its core. The message was clear. This was not a problem that could be solved through conventional means. The Ordo Xenos, after reviewing the scale and nature of the crisis, issued a directive that would come to define the response to the parasite. The decision was to initiate a protocol of exterminatus-level measures on any world where the parasite had taken hold. This was not a decision reached lightly. It meant sacrificing billions of lives to prevent the spread of a threat that had already proven too resilient for containment. The directive called for the deployment of virus bombs, orbital bombardments, and other extreme methods designed to cleanse affected planets of all life. The goal was simple: to ensure the parasite could not escape, no matter the cost. What made this moment particularly significant was not just the drastic nature of the directive, but the implications it carried for the Imperium as a whole. For the first time, the Ordo Xenos acknowledged that the parasite could not be eradicated by traditional methods. This was a tacit admission that the Imperium, for all its might and resources, faced a foe that it could not fully control. It also marked a shift in the balance of power within the Imperium, as the Inquisition was granted unprecedented authority to override planetary governors and even elements of the Astra Militarum in their pursuit of eradication. The decision to adopt such extreme measures was met with resistance from several quarters. Some planetary governors, fearing the loss of their worlds and their lives, attempted to hide outbreaks or downplay their severity. In other cases, elements of the Adeptus Mechanicus, driven by their own agendas, sought to preserve infected sites for study, believing they could unlock secrets that would benefit the Imperium. These acts of defiance only further complicated the situation, leading to internal conflicts and delays that allowed the parasite to spread even further. Despite these challenges, the directive was carried out with ruthless efficiency. Entire worlds were purged, their populations reduced to ash in the name of preserving the Imperium. This marked a turning point, not only in the handling of the crisis, but in the way the Imperium viewed its role in protecting humanity. The willingness to sacrifice billions to save trillions became a defining principle of the response. This shift was not without its consequences, as it deepened the already immense divide between the ruling classes of the Imperium and the ordinary citizens who bore the brunt of these measures. One of the most significant outcomes of this decision was the realization that eradication efforts would need to go beyond individual planets. The Ordo Xenos coordinated with the Imperial Navy to establish blockades around infected sectors, cutting them off from the rest of the galaxy. Rogue traders, merchant fleets, and even pilgrim ships were targeted if they were suspected of carrying the parasite. This created a ripple effect, disrupting trade and communication across vast swaths of the Imperium. The economic and logistical consequences were immense, but they were deemed a necessary cost to prevent further outbreaks. The turning point was not without its moments of hope. In the aftermath of the directive, a number of experimental countermeasures were developed, ranging from genetically engineered organisms designed to combat the parasite to advanced detection systems capable of identifying infected individuals before symptoms appeared. These efforts, while not entirely successful, provided a glimmer of possibility that the parasite could be managed, if not eradicated. Ultimately, this critical moment marked the point at which the Imperium fully committed to a policy of extreme eradication. The scale of the sacrifice involved was staggering, but it was a decision driven by the belief that the survival of humanity as a whole depended on it. The directive changed the course of the crisis, setting the stage for the long and arduous battle that followed. While the parasite's immediate advance was halted, the scars left by this decision would linger, a testament to the lengths the Imperium was willing to go to confront its deadliest foe. The arrival of the deadliest parasite in Imperial history left a profound and immediate impact on the galaxy, altering the course of countless worlds and sectors. The devastation it wrought was not limited to the loss of lives, but extended to nearly every facet of the Imperium's existence. The sheer scale of its influence reshaped policies, priorities, and perceptions across all levels of society, leaving scars that would endure for millennia. One of the most significant consequences was the widespread collapse of planetary populations in affected regions. Worlds that had been thriving hubs of activity, home to billions of citizens, thriving economies, and critical manufacturing centers, were reduced to desolate wastelands. This rapid depopulation caused ripple effects across entire sectors. The sudden loss of manpower crippled industry and agriculture, leaving surviving worlds struggling to meet their own needs, let alone the demands of the Imperium. Starving populations, now without the resources to maintain their way of life, were forced into brutal decisions of survival. The parasite's spread also led to an immediate destabilization of interplanetary trade and communication networks. Trade routes were severed as void ships, and merchant fleets were quarantined or destroyed outright to prevent further contamination. This disruption caused critical supply shortages in sectors that relied on regular shipments of food, munitions, and technology. For many worlds, the collapse of these trade systems triggered mass unrest. Uprisings became common, fueled by desperation and a loss of faith in the Imperium's ability to protect its people. Administratively, the Imperium struggled to maintain order amid the chaos. Planetary governors, overburdened by the scale of the crisis, often resorted to authoritarian measures to suppress dissent. Civil liberties, already limited in many regions, were further curtailed as martial law became the norm. This shift in governance created a culture of fear and resentment among imperial citizens, deepening the divide between the rulers and the ruled. Many worlds turned to extreme measures such as purges and forced labor to maintain some semblance of control over their crumbling societies. In the military sphere, the Astra Militarum and Imperial Navy faced immense strain. Entire regiments were lost to the parasite, either succumbing to infection or being exterminated to prevent further spread. Recruitment drives surged to replace the staggering losses, but the influx of untrained soldiers created logistical nightmares for commanders. The Navy, tasked with enforcing quarantines and supporting eradication efforts, found itself stretched thin. The destruction of infected ships not only diminished fleet strength, but also hindered the Imperium's ability to respond to other threats, such as Xenos incursions and uprisings. One of the most alarming impacts was the psychological toll on the Imperium's population. The parasite's horrifying effects on its victims were impossible to ignore, even for those who were not directly exposed. Rumors and first-hand accounts of the parasite's capabilities spread like wildfire, stoking fear and paranoia across the galaxy. Citizens became increasingly distrustful of one another, afraid that anyone could be carrying the infection. This widespread fear disrupted social cohesion, leading to a breakdown of community structures and an increase in violence as individuals sought to protect themselves at any cost. Religious institutions, particularly the ecclesiarchy, faced challenges in maintaining control over the faithful. The parasite's rise was seen by many as a punishment from the emperor for humanity's sins. Pilgrimage routes became vectors for infection, forcing the ecclesiarchy to restrict access to sacred sites, a decision that angered millions of devout worshippers. Clergy who attempted to calm the population often found themselves overwhelmed by the sheer despair and rage of their congregations. In some cases, entire churches were abandoned as citizens turned to more extreme interpretations of faith or rejected the emperor's protection entirely. The parasite also left a profound mark on the scientific and technological communities within the Imperium. The Adeptus Mechanicus, tasked with studying the organism, faced backlash from other factions that blamed their explorations of forbidden technologies for the outbreak. This created deep rifts between the Mechanicus and the Inquisition, as accusations of negligence and hubris were leveled against the tech priests. Research efforts, while yielding some breakthroughs, were largely hampered by the parasite's adaptability and the extreme secrecy surrounding its origins. The inability to fully understand or counter the parasite added to the atmosphere of uncertainty and dread. Perhaps the most lasting impact was the shift in how the Imperium viewed its own vulnerabilities. The crisis exposed weaknesses in everything from planetary governance to interstellar logistics. The reliance on centralized systems, the inefficiency of imperial bureaucracy, and the lack of preparedness for biological threats all became glaringly evident. While some measures were implemented to address these issues, the Imperium's sheer size and complexity made comprehensive reform nearly impossible. As a result, many of the problems revealed by the parasite's rise remained unresolved, leaving the Imperium ill-prepared for future challenges of a similar nature. The parasite's influence extended even to the Xenos races of the galaxy. Its spread into regions controlled by other species forced these factions to confront the same horrors that plagued humanity. While the Imperium largely ignored these developments, focusing instead on its own survival, there were isolated reports of temporary alliances formed to combat the shared threat. These fleeting moments of cooperation, however, did little to mitigate the overall impact of the parasite on the galaxy as a whole. In the aftermath of the crisis, the scars left by the parasite were evident across all levels of the Imperium. Entire sectors remained destabilized, their populations reduced to shadows of their former selves. The parasite's legacy was one of destruction and despair, a grim reminder of the fragility of humanity's empire. Even after its immediate threat was contained, the memory of its rise and the devastation it caused continued to haunt the Imperium, shaping its policies and priorities for centuries to come. Among the many facets of the deadliest parasite in the history of the Imperium, its most intriguing aspects lie in its unique biology, behavioral traits, and its rumored connections to the galaxy's deeper mysteries. These characteristics have made it a topic of fascination and debate within the Warhammer 40K fan community, with countless theories attempting to unravel the enigma of its origins and purpose. The parasite's uncanny adaptability and its unsettling methods of survival have elevated it beyond the realm of mere biology, turning it into a symbol of existential dread. One of the parasite's most discussed traits is its extraordinary adaptability. Unlike most biological organisms, which are limited by environmental conditions and specific hosts, the parasite is capable of infecting an astonishing variety of life forms, from humans to Xenos species and even biomechanical constructs. This adaptability is not only physical, but also psychological. It appears to alter the behavior of its hosts in ways that benefit its own survival, manipulating them to spread the infection further. Fan theories have speculated that this trait might indicate some level of sentience or a connection to the warp, though no definitive evidence exists to confirm these claims. Its method of reproduction has also been a subject of intense scrutiny. Unlike other parasites that rely on straightforward biological processes, this organism employs a complex and multi-stage life cycle that appears to evolve depending on the circumstances. Early stages of infection often go unnoticed as the parasite lies dormant, waiting for an optimal moment to become active. Once triggered, its effects escalate rapidly, overwhelming the host before spreading to others in proximity. This life cycle has led some to argue that the parasite might not be a naturally occurring entity, but rather the product of deliberate engineering by an ancient and advanced civilization. Another unique feature that has captured attention is the parasite's apparent ability to integrate itself with technology. Infected machinery and cybernetic implants have been observed malfunctioning or behaving unpredictably, as if the parasite is able to influence even non-organic systems. This has sparked debates about whether the organism operates on a purely biological level or possesses a form of biomechanical interface. Some fan theories suggest that this ability could point to a connection with ancient Xenos artifacts, perhaps relics from a forgotten age when such hybrid organisms were used as weapons or tools of control. The parasite's resilience is another aspect that has fueled speculation. Efforts to eradicate it have consistently been hampered by its ability to mutate and adapt to countermeasures. Traditional sterilization methods, such as chemical agents or extreme temperatures, often fail to destroy it entirely. Even when exposed to conditions that would annihilate most life forms, the parasite has demonstrated a capacity to survive in dormant states for extended periods, waiting for favorable conditions to re-emerge. This has led some to theorize that the parasite might be capable of self-preservation on a level that borders on immortality. One of the most chilling aspects of the parasite is the psychological impact it has on its hosts. Beyond the physical symptoms of infection, victims often exhibit severe paranoia, hallucinations, and violent tendencies. Some accounts describe infected individuals displaying knowledge or abilities they could not possibly possess, adding an unsettling layer of mystery to the parasite's effects. This has fueled theories that it might have a connection to the warp, with some speculating that it serves as a bridge between the material realm and the immaterial. If true, this would explain its resistance to conventional methods of eradication and its ability to influence the minds of its victims. Theories about its origins remain one of the most hotly debated topics among fans. While some believe the parasite is a natural evolution of ancient pathogens, others argue that it was deliberately created. The most popular theory suggests that the parasite might be tied to an extinct Xenos race, potentially as a bioweapon designed to weaken enemies before direct confrontation. Others hypothesize that it is a remnant of the Old One's experiments, a biological artifact from an era when the galaxy was shaped by titanic struggles between primordial powers. The possibility that it might have been left behind as a failsafe, designed to reactivate under specific conditions, adds a layer of intrigue to its history. Another point of interest is its mysterious role in the broader galactic ecosystem. Some accounts suggest that the parasite might play a role beyond destruction, potentially influencing the evolution of its hosts in subtle ways. While this is far from proven, it raises the possibility that the parasite serves a larger purpose, perhaps one beyond the understanding of the Imperium. This idea has led to heated discussions about whether the parasite is purely a threat or if it represents a misunderstood element of a grander design. Despite the devastation it has caused, the parasite has also inspired a grim fascination within the Adeptus Mechanicus and other factions. The possibility of harnessing its unique traits for technological or military purposes continues to tempt those willing to take risks in pursuit of power. Fan speculation often centers on secret experiments conducted by rogue elements within the Mechanicus, who may have sought to unlock its secrets despite the risks involved. Whether these experiments have yielded results remains unknown, but the idea of the parasite being used as a weapon adds a sinister dimension to its legacy. Ultimately, the parasite's most unique aspect is its ability to provoke endless questions. Its adaptability, resilience, and mysterious origins make it a subject of fascination, not only for those within the 40K universe, but also for fans of its lore. The organism embodies the themes of the setting itself: the fragility of humanity, the dangers of unchecked ambition, and the terrifying unknowns that lurk in the darkness of the galaxy. It remains a topic that invites both awe and dread, a testament to the universe's boundless potential for horror and intrigue. Amid the chaos and devastation wrought by the deadliest parasite in the Imperium's history, certain individuals emerged whose actions and decisions became pivotal to the unfolding events. These figures, whether driven by duty, ambition, or survival, left an indelible mark on the crisis. Their strengths, weaknesses, and motivations revealed the complex human responses to such an unparalleled threat. One of the most notable figures was an inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, renowned for their unorthodox methods and relentless determination. Known for their razor-sharp intellect and deep understanding of Xenos biology, they were among the first to recognize the true scope of the parasite's threat. Their investigations often placed them at odds with other factions within the Imperium, as their insistence on pursuing unconventional solutions clashed with the rigid orthodoxy of their peers. This Inquisitor's greatest strength was their adaptability, always willing to question established protocols if it meant gaining an edge against the parasite. However, their unyielding pursuit of answers sometimes blinded them to the human cost of their actions, earning them as many enemies as allies. Another key figure was a magos biologist of the Adeptus Mechanicus, whose obsession with understanding the parasite bordered on fanaticism. A visionary in the field of genetic manipulation, this tech priest saw the organism not merely as a threat, but as a key to unlocking new biological frontiers. Their ability to dissect and analyze the parasite's structure led to significant advancements in detection and containment methods. However, their willingness to take risks in their research often placed others in jeopardy, and rumors persisted that they secretly conducted forbidden experiments on infected subjects. This duality of brilliance and recklessness defined their role in the crisis, as their discoveries came at a heavy price. On the battlefield, a commander of the Astra Militarum distinguished themselves through their ability to inspire loyalty and maintain discipline in the face of overwhelming despair. Leading their troops during the darkest hours of the crisis, this individual became a symbol of resistance for countless regiments. Their strategic mind allowed them to coordinate large-scale evacuations and quarantine operations with remarkable precision, often minimizing casualties where others would have failed. Despite their successes, the burden of sacrificing entire units to contain outbreaks weighed heavily on their conscience, and their later decisions were marked by increasing caution. This internal conflict between duty and compassion became a defining trait of their leadership. Among the civilian population, a rogue trader became an unlikely hero. Initially motivated by profit, this individual stumbled upon the parasite while salvaging artifacts on a remote world. Realizing the potential consequences of its spread, they chose to forego personal gain and instead dedicated their fleet to aiding containment efforts. Their resourcefulness and extensive network of contacts allowed them to provide critical supplies and intelligence to Imperial forces. However, their actions often placed them in dangerous situations, as their lack of formal military training made them vulnerable to manipulation and betrayal. Despite these challenges, their willingness to act selflessly earned them a reputation as one of the few civilians who truly made a difference. An unusual and controversial figure in the crisis was a high-ranking member of the ecclesiarchy who took a radically different approach to combating the parasite. Viewing the organism as a test of faith, they rallied the faithful in affected regions, preaching that unwavering devotion to the Emperor would provide protection. Their charisma and fiery rhetoric inspired hope in many, temporarily uniting fractured communities. However, their disdain for scientific approaches and their insistence on relying solely on spiritual solutions often clashed with other leaders, leading to tensions that hindered cooperative efforts. While their actions brought comfort to some, their stubbornness also contributed to avoidable losses, making their legacy a polarizing one. In the shadows, a shadowy operative of the Officio Assassinorum played a critical but largely unseen role. Tasked with eliminating individuals who posed a risk of spreading the parasite, they operated with ruthless efficiency. Their mastery of stealth and their unmatched combat skills made them invaluable in missions that required surgical precision. Yet, their loyalty to their mission above all else created an air of detachment that alienated those they worked alongside. For this operative, the parasite was not just an enemy, but a puzzle to be solved, and their cold, methodical approach made them both a feared and respected figure during the crisis. One of the most tragic figures was a Medicae officer stationed in the heart of a major outbreak. Known for their tireless dedication to saving lives, they worked around the clock to treat infected individuals, even as the situation spiraled out of control. Their innovative treatments and unshakable resolve earned them the admiration of their colleagues, but the constant exposure to suffering took a heavy toll. As the crisis worsened, they began to question their ability to make a difference, and their growing despair eventually led them to take extreme measures. Despite their eventual fate, their efforts saved countless lives and underscored the human cost of the parasite's rampage. Finally, a mysterious figure emerged whose true identity and motives remain the subject of speculation. Believed to be a rogue scholar or Xenos exile, they provided key insights into the parasite's behavior and weaknesses. Their knowledge, far surpassing that of any Imperial authority, suggested a deep connection to the organism's origins. However, their unwillingness to reveal their full intentions left others questioning whether they were truly an ally or merely using the Imperium to further their own agenda. This enigmatic individual's contributions were invaluable, but their presence raised more questions than answers, adding another layer of complexity to an already convoluted crisis. These individuals, each with their unique qualities and flaws, shaped the narrative of the parasite's rise and fall. Their actions, whether heroic, pragmatic or self-serving, reflected the Imperium's diverse and often conflicting responses to existential threats. Together, they exemplified the resilience and fragility of humanity, showcasing both its capacity for greatness and its vulnerability in the face of the galaxy's endless horrors. The story of the deadliest parasite in the history of the Imperium is riddled with unanswered questions and enduring mysteries that continue to intrigue scholars, scientists, and fan theorists alike. Despite extensive research and countless sacrifices, the full truth about this organism remains elusive. These unresolved aspects have fueled debates, speculation, and even conspiracy theories within the Warhammer 40K community, adding layers of depth to its already complex legacy. One of the most hotly debated questions revolves around the parasite's origins. While some believe it to be a naturally evolved pathogen from a remote and unexplored world, others argue it could not have developed its unique traits without some form of external interference. Theories abound that the organism might have been engineered as a bioweapon by an ancient Xenos civilization. Some suggest its adaptability and apparent ability to manipulate both organic and mechanical systems are hallmarks of deliberate design rather than random evolution. Others point to ancient ruins found on infected worlds as potential evidence of its connection to a long-lost race, sparking endless speculation about whether its creators were wiped out by their own creation or had intentionally unleashed it upon the galaxy. Another unresolved mystery lies in its connection to the warp. While there is no definitive proof that the parasite possesses any warp-related abilities, its ability to influence the minds of its hosts has raised troubling questions. Victims often exhibit behavior that seems almost coordinated, as though guided by an external force. This has led some to speculate that the organism might serve as a conduit for warp entities, or even have some form of latent psychic ability. If true, this would place the parasite in an entirely different category of threats, making it not only a biological danger, but also a potential spiritual one. The organism's life cycle presents another puzzle. Despite extensive study, critical aspects of its reproductive process remain poorly understood. For example, how does it determine when to transition from dormancy to full activity? What triggers its most aggressive phases of infection? There are also conflicting reports about whether the parasite is capable of true replication or if it relies on external factors to propagate. This lack of clarity has fueled fears that the Imperium may not have fully eradicated it, as dormant forms could still exist in unexplored regions or hidden within seemingly safe populations. The question of whether the parasite is entirely extinct remains one of the most chilling unknowns. While the Imperium declared victory after its primary outbreaks were contained, skeptics argue that its adaptability and resilience make true extinction unlikely. Theories abound that it could be lying dormant in forgotten sectors, waiting for conditions to favor its resurgence. Some suggest that it might have already adapted to evade detection altogether, potentially integrating itself into unsuspecting ecosystems or even Imperial infrastructure. This lingering fear keeps many sectors on high alert, as even the smallest outbreak could reignite a galaxy-wide crisis. Another contentious issue is the role of certain factions within the Imperium during the crisis. There are persistent rumors that some groups, particularly rogue elements of the Adeptus Mechanicus, may have deliberately preserved samples of the parasite for their own purposes. If true, this would raise serious ethical and strategic questions about the Imperium's handling of the situation. Did these groups believe they could harness the parasite's unique traits for the benefit of humanity, or were they motivated purely by the pursuit of forbidden knowledge? The possibility that remnants of the organism exist in Mechanicus vaults is a source of endless speculation and concern. The exact extent of the parasite's impact on Xenos species also remains unclear. While the focus of Imperial records is naturally on humanity, there are scattered reports of the organism infecting and devastating alien populations. Some suggest that the parasite may have originated in a Xenos ecosystem and spread to humanity through contact with their technology or biology. Others propose that certain alien species may have developed natural defenses against it, which, if studied, could offer clues to future countermeasures. However, the Imperium's xenophobic policies and limited communication with other species make it unlikely that such possibilities will ever be fully explored. The question of whether the parasite had a purpose beyond survival is another topic of debate. While most pathogens exist purely to propagate themselves, the organism's behavior has led some to theorize that it might have had a larger, more deliberate goal. Its ability to manipulate hosts and its apparent resistance to extermination suggest a level of sophistication that goes beyond simple biology. Was it merely a tool of destruction, or did it serve some grander design that remains incomprehensible to the Imperium? These questions remain unanswered, fueling endless speculation about its true nature. Finally, the impact of the parasite on Imperial policy and culture raises important philosophical questions. The crisis forced the Imperium to confront its own limitations, revealing vulnerabilities that had long been ignored. While measures were taken to prevent similar outbreaks, the lingering trauma of the event has left a mark on humanity's collective psyche. Did the parasite ultimately strengthen the Imperium by exposing its flaws, or did it weaken it by sowing fear and mistrust? This debate continues to shape discussions about how the Imperium handles existential threats, with some arguing for greater scientific transparency and others insisting on the need for unwavering vigilance and secrecy. These unanswered questions and unresolved mysteries ensure that the parasite remains one of the most fascinating and troubling chapters in the Imperium's history. Its legacy is one of fear, uncertainty, and the haunting realization that even the mightiest empire in the galaxy is not immune to the dangers that lurk in the shadows. For the fans and scholars of Warhammer 40K, the parasite represents the ultimate embodiment of the unknown, a reminder that the universe's greatest horrors often lie not in the battles between titanic armies, but in the unseen forces that defy understanding. The long-term consequences of the parasite's impact on the Imperium of man are as far-reaching as they are uncertain, reshaping policies, perceptions, and even humanity's understanding of its place in the galaxy. The crisis left behind scars that will not heal quickly, and its legacy continues to ripple across the vast expanse of the Imperium, influencing everything from military doctrine to the behavior of ordinary citizens. While the immediate danger of the parasite may have been mitigated, its shadow lingers, ensuring that its story is far from over. One of the most significant changes is the evolution of Imperial policy regarding biological threats. The outbreak revealed glaring weaknesses in the Imperium's ability to respond to non-conventional dangers. In the aftermath, the Adeptus Administratum implemented sweeping reforms aimed at improving detection and containment measures. Planetary quarantine procedures were standardized, and protocols for dealing with unexplained illnesses or infestations were strengthened. However, the Imperium's immense bureaucracy often hinders these efforts, with delays and miscommunications remaining a persistent problem. Despite these challenges, the reforms represent a shift toward a more proactive stance against similar threats in the future. The crisis also led to a re-evaluation of the Imperium's relationship with its ecosystems and the natural world. The parasite's origins, whether terrestrial, xenos, or engineered, highlighted the dangers of unregulated exploitation and the consequences of disregarding planetary biospheres. Agri-worlds and forge worlds, in particular, began implementing stricter monitoring of environmental changes to detect potential anomalies early. While this newfound awareness has helped in some cases, the relentless industrial demands of the Imperium often override such considerations, perpetuating the same conditions that allowed the parasite to thrive in the first place. In the military sphere, the parasite has left an indelible mark on strategic doctrine. Commanders now approach densely populated worlds and void ship deployments with heightened caution, knowing how easily such environments can become breeding grounds for unseen dangers. The Astra Militarum has incorporated new protocols for identifying and isolating biological threats, while the Imperial Navy has adopted enhanced sterilization measures for its vessels. These changes have made the Imperium more vigilant, though the cost of maintaining such heightened preparedness places additional strain on its already overburdened forces. The psychological effects of the parasite's outbreak on the Imperium's population cannot be overstated. Fear of unseen and insidious threats has become deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness of humanity. Even centuries later, stories of the parasite are whispered among citizens, fueling paranoia and mistrust. This heightened fear has led to a more insular society, where suspicion of neighbors and outsiders is commonplace. While this mindset helps prevent complacency, it also exacerbates divisions within the Imperium, making unity harder to achieve in an already fractured empire. The ecclesiarchy's response to the crisis has had lasting spiritual implications. The parasite was framed by many within the faith as a test of humanity's devotion to the Emperor. Infected worlds were often portrayed as being punished for their sins, while those who survived were seen as examples of divine favor. This narrative has reinforced the ecclesiarchy's grip on the population, as fear of moral failure has driven countless citizens to deeper piety. However, this same rhetoric has also led to extreme measures, such as purges of suspected heretics or unclean individuals, further destabilizing fragile communities and leaving a legacy of fear-driven zealotry. The Adeptus Mechanicus has also been profoundly affected by the crisis. While officially the Mechanicus denies any fault in the spread of the parasite, its internal doctrines have shifted to place greater emphasis on the study of biological threats. This has led to a resurgence of interest in forbidden technologies, as tech priests seek to uncover the secrets of Xenos biology to bolster humanity's defenses. While some of these efforts have yielded promising advancements, they have also sparked tensions within the Imperium, as other factions question the wisdom of delving into such dangerous knowledge. On a larger scale, the parasite's outbreak has sparked debates about the Imperium's ability to withstand existential threats. While the Imperium prides itself on its resilience, the crisis exposed its vulnerabilities in ways that even its leaders cannot ignore. Some believe that the outbreak served as a warning, urging humanity to adopt a more unified and forward-thinking approach to survival. Others see it as a grim reminder of the galaxy's hostility, reinforcing the need for the Imperium's authoritarian structures and uncompromising doctrines. This ideological divide continues to shape debates within the Imperium's upper echelons, influencing its policies and priorities for centuries to come. The parasite's legacy extends beyond the Imperium, as Xenos civilizations and even renegade factions have taken note of its devastating potential. There are rumors that certain alien species have begun adapting their own defenses to counter similar threats, while rogue elements within the galaxy may be seeking to replicate the organism's capabilities for their own ends. The possibility of the parasite being used as a weapon in future conflicts remains a chilling prospect, one that ensures the organism's influence will persist long after its initial outbreak. Perhaps the most significant long-term consequence is the lingering uncertainty about whether the parasite is truly gone. The organism's resilience and adaptability make it nearly impossible to confirm its extinction. Many within the Imperium believe that it is only a matter of time before the parasite resurfaces, either in a remote corner of the galaxy or through the actions of those who seek to exploit it. This fear has fostered a culture of constant vigilance, with entire sectors remaining on high alert for even the slightest sign of its return. The parasite has also left a profound philosophical impact on the Imperium's perception of its place in the galaxy. For all its power and grandeur, the crisis revealed the fragility of humanity's dominion. It forced the Imperium to confront the reality that threats can emerge not only from towering Xenos fleets or warp-spawned horrors, but also from the microscopic and unseen. This humbling realization has shaped the Imperium's worldview, serving as both a cautionary tale and a rallying cry for those who continue to fight for humanity's survival. In the end, the parasite story is one of both devastation and resilience. Its impact has reshaped the Imperium in countless ways, forcing humanity to adapt and evolve in the face of an unimaginable threat. While the scars it left behind may never fully heal, they serve as a reminder of the Imperium's enduring struggle against the countless dangers that lurk in the dark corners of the galaxy. Whether its legacy will ultimately strengthen or weaken humanity remains to be seen, but its influence will continue to echo through the annals of Imperial history for millennia to come.